You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. This episode is sponsored by Demand Derivatives, a startup futures exchange and clearinghouse trading the world's major assets in a creative new way. You already trade on an exchange. Here is your chance to own one. Before they approach large strategic partners for funding, the pioneering team at Demand Derivatives launched a crowdfunding portal so that regular traders have the chance to buy shares. Learn more and become a part of this revolutionary fintech project now at demandderivatives.com/crowdfunding.
Join us now for the expert source for inside information on the options markets. It's time for Options Insider Radio with your host, Mark Longo.
All right, everybody. That music must mean it is Interview Tuesday. Yet again, it is time to welcome on another guest from out the world of options and derivatives and indeed beyond, and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. My name is Mark Longo from the optionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever exciting, at least we hope so, Options Insider Radio Network. Reminding you, if you like what you hear, not just for the interview program, there's usually a couple of shows hitting you a day here on the network. If you like what you hear for any of those, make sure you keep rating and reviewing those shows wherever you get this content. We've seen a massive influx of new participants in the options market and, of course, new listeners to this network over the course of the past year or so. So it really does help give them a place to go to find quality content in these troubled times. Keep those questions and comments coming, too. We do love to hear from you guys. And let's see who we're going to hear from in the old hot seat today. He is a returning friend of the network, even though he hasn't been on in a little bit. He's Mr. Greg FERRARI, the Vice President and the head of U.S. Options over there at Nasdaq. Greg, welcome back to the Options Insider Radio program. It has been too long, sir.
It has been too long, Mark. You know, 2020 was one of those years where you just hunkered down, and here we are in a new year. It's Interview Tuesday. I like Taco Tuesday better, but I'll take Interview Tuesday. So I'm glad to be here.
I might have chicken later. I'm not sure we're going to have tacos, but I do like the theme of Taco Tuesday. I'm looking here. The last time you and I chatted was all the way back. It seems like a lifetime ago now, at the last OIC. We all know there was no OIC conference last year. So all the way back in May of 2019, when we got together down there in sunny Florida at the last in-person options industry conference. There will be a virtual one, I'm pleased to say, this year, but we won't be getting back together in person anytime soon. So, Greg, it's been a while. It's been since May of 2019. And as you've alluded to, a lot has happened in the intervening years. A lot of new people, of course, have discovered the network as well since your last appearance. So maybe let's start there for a lot of our first-timers. Greg, why don't you go ahead and give our audience a little bit of an overview of your background in the options space, as well as what the head of U.S. options does day-to-day over there at Nasdaq.
There's been so much in the last 2 years, but especially in 2020, what you saw was just really a real focus and energy of this industry coming together. We did 7.52 billion contracts in 2020, which was a 43% lift off the previous high in 2018. And every month we saw just additional volume records in this industry. What exchanges do, we're behind the scenes, but we essentially are the glue that brings essentially everything together to allow for the appropriate transfer of risk for parties. And proud to say that Nasdaq had its best year ever in the options business in 2020, and that is no it's not an easy task, Mark. And so with that is a focus and attention like no other, and I'm really proud of that accomplishment of where we are. My role, I've been with Nasdaq for 9 years. I took over the options business in 2018 as but being with the company for the 9 years that I mentioned, but had history with the ISE, played in a variety of different business development and product development roles at the exchange. But bringing together the 6 exchanges, our business strategy, and how we deliver value for our clients in an automated fashion is a task for few, and hopefully I'm doing a good job for the market.
Well, you mentioned that 2020 was an insane year. I think pick any adjective and slot it in there, and it probably will be inadequate to the task of surmising 2020. But from an options perspective, it certainly was a historic year. We were just talking one of our recent episodes on the network here about the numbers coming out of OIC and OCC for 2020. And of course, just a historic, almost 50% increase from the previous record year, which was 2020. And of course, December ending the year with the most active month in the history of U.S. options. So quite a lot of paper hitting the tape. But it sounds like, Greg, 2020 was also a pretty good year from an options perspective for Nasdaq, sir, and the legion of exchanges you guys have under your purview.
Sure. So what we saw was really a transformation from the index options focus into investors, focused and attention towards single stock options. We saw an average daily volume essentially grow from around 17, 18 million a day in 2019 to 27 to 28 million a day in 2020. And so that 58% growth continued to really climb throughout the year. December, as you mentioned, we as an industry in single stock options about 32 million a day, but a little bit more than that. And January, here we are, we're at 40 million a day. And so something is going well, right? The market is obviously performing admirably in terms of index participation, but participants utilizing single stock options seems to be the driving force. And what we're seeing here is really an attention and a focus on Nasdaq 100 companies. So those are the what we call the modern day industrials. You had 17 billion of new asset inflows into the queues, and what we see is really Nasdaq 100 companies driving the market. And so with that, we see an opportunity to service investors through our listed companies and give participants choice in how they represent their interest in these great companies.
You know, one of the things that often gets lost in the conversation through all those numbers we just talked about, which are enormous and impressive, but people forget that back around March of last year, something happened in the options market that was effectively unprecedented. You know, back in the days when I was a market maker on the floor of the exchange, it was the day we all dreaded, the day that the market makers on the floor effectively went away and it all shifted upstairs. That's exactly what we saw in the beginning there in March and extending through a lot of the rest of the year and many products out there. So we had this unprecedented environment where for the first time in its history, the entire options market was 100% electronic. You're talking even deep storied legacy pits like SPX over there on the CBOE or even Eurodollars over there on the CME, things people had a hard time even thinking about in an electronic context. Now 100% electronic for the first time ever. And myself, Greg, maybe it's just the cynic in me. I expected an enormous amount of issues. I thought maybe certainly in the early days, the market may bow under the weight of the volume that was going up. And it just had never really handled that much volume in a truly electronic capacity before. And yet we saw exactly the opposite. The market not only survived, but it thrived under that environment, putting up record numbers month after month all the way through the end of the year. Were you as surprised as I was, Greg, that the entire electronic market, that it was able to not only to survive, but to handle record amounts of volume that it did last year, Greg?
The full year, absolutely not. No surprise at all. We were built for this. 2020 was really built to have the option market be recognized as essentially a worldwide asset class that really provides investors with the needs to mitigate risk and really to utilize in a variety of different fashions. As it pertains to the floor closures, that we were closed for about 10 weeks. I think the industry had about 6 weeks of closure, if memory serves me correct, all of April, if you will, for sure. But what we saw was an opportunity to service our customers, educate them about the different tools that were available, how to utilize electronic crossing mechanisms, how to utilize the different features and functions that were available in the market, instead of relying on the traditional call your flow broker, have them represent the order in the pits, provide essentially those fills back to those participants. Essentially, I saw this as the dream for David Krell and Gary Katz was born in that 6 week period, which is like, we're in the electronic only world. How do we perform? And honestly, we performed fantastic as an industry. I'm proud to be part of that in terms of what Nasdaq's role was in delivering value for the market. There are certain participants that certainly had to adapt quickly, and our team was very responsive in how to educate participants. It wasn't just Nasdaq. There were a variety of different participants that utilized the different tools that are out there in the market, from the myriad of broker dealers and market providers of infrastructure needed to be able to operate in that fashion. And I believe that the industry would be easy to transition to that again if need be. But kudos to everyone involved as the industry performed admirably.
That's a good point. That is, in many ways, the manifestation of what was started by David Krell and Gary Katz, of course, the founders over there of the ISE, which I know you spent some time over there to see the entire industry go electronic this year. Must have been interesting for both of them. But speaking of surprises, the other big surprise, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, Greg, with your single stock volume, is just the, I think, explosion doesn't even cover it. Tsunami, call it what you will, of retail traders. People have described in many ways, the Robinhood masses, the one lot traders, whatever you want to call them out there. They've just taken the options market by storm. In fact, we're seeing that yet again play out right now, literally as we speak, in certain names out there. But that was the other big surprise of 2020, is just the awakening of retail to options trading. There were a lot of maybe anticipated consequences of a pandemic. I don't think anyone really thought this one was coming. Greg, this one surprised you as much as it did everyone else. Just the retail, not just taking up options, but really just embracing them wholeheartedly in 2020, sir.
Certainly. I'd say that with essentially a bull market from, call it March 23rd on, and essentially the Fed put, if you will, and sort of that guaranteed backstop, you saw essentially investors express their views in the market very direct, and the amount of content that's available online, again, through the myriad of channels. There's newer channels, there's traditional channels for education, but investors are now way more informed with way better tools than 20 years ago, when the last time a market operated quite like this. And so, just thinking about what we just talked about, which is, only pits being around in 1999, to how we've evolved so much so over the last 20 years, is really a testament to what we're all doing. And quite frankly, the industry is yearning for more retail sized products, essentially more suitable products that, given sort of the lower notional entry point into some of these larger indices like the NDX, which is a $13,500 index. And so we see an opportunity to create more essentially bite-sized products, if you will. And so we're happy to report today that, later this quarter, we're going to be launching a 1/100th size of an index option in the Nasdaq 100, ticker symbol XND, X-ray, Nancy Dog. And so that product will essentially be what we think is more suitable for newer investors, give them the efficiencies of what index options provide and allow for them to express their views in these great companies without having single stock risk, particularly with the components that are driving the market. And so these innovations truly are what the market is calling for, and we're happy to service the market in that way.
Well, it certainly has been another trend of the last few years is that as you call them, the bite-sized or the micro-sized, whatever you want to call them, have certainly done enormous volume at a lot of different venues over the course of the past year. So I think it's a good move to see Nasdaq getting into that game more aggressively with a micro-sized contract. You know, the other question everyone's asking now, Greg, when they come on a show like this, and I think maybe it's because a lot of people who've been in the option space for a long time, they're just a deeply cynical bunch at heart. Maybe they've been burned one too many times. But the only question everyone's asking these days is we saw this great influx of retail in 2020. But of course, everyone was stuck at home. They couldn't go to their jobs, or maybe they were doing it virtually. So they had a perfect environment to trading. But now, hopefully, things clear up sometime in 2021. We can all get back to our day-to-day lives as normal. Will this retail explosion, this retail tsunami, stay around? That's the question everyone's kind of pondering these days. So I'm curious for you, Greg, over there, and the team at Nasdaq over there. What are your thoughts on this retail phenomenon? Is it sustainable? Is this a sea change? Is this the new way of doing business in the options market going forward, or is it a little bit of a flash in the pan and it'll simmer down in the future?
Mark, we hope so. We clearly see the market, the addressable market growing, the yearn for these products growing and expressing their views, typically through short dated options, we think has really caught the eye of these investors, whether they're working from home or working, at an office setting. They will find ways to express their views in the options market. Obviously, with smartphones being a large part of the distribution and entry point, those things are clearly going to be moving with them, even if they are working in an office setting in the future. The tools are just fantastic from the myriad of retail brokers that have built fantastic delivery and tools to be able to consume information. And we believe with proper content, with proper education, is essentially a more informed consumer. And we believe that there's an opportunity for them to continue to express their views in a return to office setting.
I like that. The return to office setting. Maybe I'll have that again in our near future here. But you mentioned one of the products you guys have brought to bear or are planning on bringing to bear to greet this explosion of volume. Another one you guys have been talking about a lot, including many appearances on our option block program last year, was your new foray into the volatility market. Of course, VolQ, aka the at-the-money volatility of the Nasdaq 100. So not messing around with any of the skew components that some of the other volatility products out there utilize. Obviously, it's still early going. It's still primarily a future. It's not even really an option yet. Hopefully, we'll see that sometime in 2021. But Greg, I haven't had a chance to pick your brain about this product yet. What are your thoughts on getting into the volatility fray, the volatility market now here at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021? And what are your thoughts on how the early volume is shaping up, sir?
It's hard to grow a new product, and that's not a cop-out. That's just a challenge and an opportunity for us. And we have a great partner in CME working with us as we're the index provider with our great friend in Scott Nations. And so it's a journey, and we're going to continue to educate. We're going to continue to inform. And what we're going to do is really think about how we can, showcase the differentiators of volatility on the Nasdaq 100. As you said, stripping out the skewness of what VolQ represents, and getting out there as early and as often as we possibly can to really build the appropriate ecosystem that the market is calling for.
I know there are plans sometime in 2021 to list the options on. Any more insight you can give to our audience on some sort of frame of reference for when they could hopefully expect VolQ options coming to a broker near them, Greg?
We are working with the SEC on that as we speak. We've been working with them for quite some time, really to educate them and inform them about all the different components that are required for a new product launch. And we're hopeful this is launched in 2021. But until the SEC gives us the proverbial green light, I can't give you a better date than that.
We talked XND, we talked VolCube. I always love new products, Greg. So if you got any other interesting new products or initiatives up your sleeve that you want to share with our audience, now is the time, sir. The floor is yours.
Really, we see Nasdaq 100 as the index that is where everyone is going for performance. The total return of the Nasdaq 100 versus the S&P 500 is outmatched. And what we see is how do you use that to generate strike the right balance between benchmarking and performance. And so for us, retail contracts, which yield to less slippage versus those indexes, as well as some volatility products to build out the ecosystem, is really important for us. From there, we continue to survey different investor types on additional products, but not every idea is going to yield a home run product for options participants. We think we do a great job with our ETP clients in terms of product creation. A lot of those products end up in the form of an ETP as opposed to a specific option that is a dedicated index option. And so we're proud to work with the community on that. I will say that, new products can also come in the form of single stock options. And in 2020, you saw over 300 companies come to market. And I heard a stat this morning, Mark, 71 IPOs on Nasdaq in January alone, 71. And so with the issuance of SPACs, with the issuance of the direct listings with a capital raise, and your traditional IPOs, you're finding companies come to market sooner. And to me, that's innovation for the option market, because a healthy derivative market helps the underlying cash market. And so the new issuance calendar is robust, and quite frankly, the option market is thriving as a result of that.
Before we wrap up here, Greg, we were just talking earlier about in-person versus electronic, and you mentioned how you have so many exchanges over there at Nasdaq. One of those exchanges is the Philly. We've had more than a few listeners ask us of late what's going on over there at the old PhilX. I know you guys obviously invested quite a bit in it. You relaunched it in this new modernized incarnation of the PhilX. Then, of course, everything happened in 2020. And we all know how that went. So maybe give our audience a quick update on the status. What's going on with the new modernized version of the PhilX? Are there people back down there in some capacity, or is it 100% virtual? What's the status of the Philly over there?
Open outcry is alive and well, Mark. So we closed at one point during the shortened Thanksgiving week due to COVID-19. But when we were closed, it gave us an opportunity to review essentially all of our business continuity plans, have that infrastructure essentially move into a what we call outside of our DMZ, to have remote access of our in-crowd technology, if you will. And so it was an opportunity to reinvest in the infrastructure and the capacity and the resiliency that powers the entire exchange, not just the open outcry component. And quite frankly, what we see is really a robust infrastructure. Hundreds of different clients rely on the participants that reside at our new state-of-the-art trading floor at FMC Tower. You should come visit us, Mark, down there whenever you're in the travel mode in 2021, hopefully, where you can hop on a flight and come see the new state-of-the-art trading floor in Philadelphia. It is a sight to be seen, and the technology that powers it is world-class.
When I got out my little hole here, Greg, that'll be my first stop. You have my word on it. Unfortunately, Greg, that music means we're coming up against it here for Interview Tuesday today. But before we go, I'd like to leave our audience wanting more, perhaps a little hopeful, a little optimistic for the future. So if you have any hints, any teases of what they can expect from you and the NASDAQ options team, have at it, sir.
Well, I already gave you more than a tease. I gave you a product launch. I'm excited about that. But if I had to give unsolicited advice, would be continue to evolve, continue to learn, and what worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. Continue to refine your craft. This is a great asset class, and you have the tools to be awesome.
And if folks want to learn more about XND or VolQ or any of the things we talked about on the show today, Greg, where should they go? What should they do?
They should go to our website, which we will have a series of alerts from the exchange, but we'll have dedicated web pages, we'll have social content, and we'll be working with a myriad of brokers to inform participants on exactly what these products represent. We did publish a portal for education called Smart Invest, a lot of different pieces of content and collateral from the exchange. But for purposes of product launches, I would say subscribe to a Nasdaq alerts on NasdaqTrader.com, and you'll be hearing from us soon.
There you go. Check them out, NasdaqTrader.com. You can also go to NasDaq.com/options. That also works. If you go there, you'll see some interesting content, including a show we did not too long ago on the option block over there. It's a lot of fun stuff to check out over there and more. And on behalf of Greg and everybody over there at NASDAQ, and indeed myself, I think everyone out there for joining us today for the Advisors Option earlier in the day, and now, of course, for Interview Tuesday, reminding you there's a whole heck of a lot of other content coming at you throughout the week here. Education Wednesday with Options Bootcamp, Option Playbook Radio. Thursday, we have, of course, the second episode of the Option Block and TWIFO. Friday, of course, Volatility Views. Then it all kicks off again on Monday next week with the Option Block, all the way through to another Interview Tuesday and another episode of Options Insider Radio.
This episode is sponsored by Demand Derivatives, a startup futures exchange and clearinghouse trading the world's major assets in a creative new way. You already trade on an exchange. Here is your chance to own one. Before they approach large strategic partners for funding, the pioneering team at Demand Derivatives launched a crowdfunding portal so that regular traders have the chance to buy shares. Learn more and become a part of this revolutionary fintech project now at demandderivatives.com/crowdfunding. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.